One more?
Well,
Okay.
this.
This one? This one?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
1, 2, 3, day.
Yep.
1, 2,
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to Positive Life New South Wales and the New South Wales Ministry of Health's World AIDS Day celebration and commemoration. Firstly, please join me in thanking John O'Hendel and Steph Zaka for their beautiful... In keeping with COVID-safe arrangements, on your seat you will see that you have a little show bag which has a mask in it, and you've also got high tea in a box. So we've tried to make this as COVID-safe event as possible. We had hoped to launch the new New South Wales HIV strategy for 2021 to 2025. But this is, after all, 2020, a year unlike any other in living memory, and the COVID-19 pandemic has affected everyone. In 2020, Australia and the world's attention has been focused by the COVID-19 pandemic on health and how pandemics affect lives and livelihoods. COVID-19 is showing once again how health is interlinked with other critical issues, such as reducing inequality, human rights, gender, social protection, and economic growth. With this in mind, this year's theme for World AIDS Day is Global Solidarity, Shared Responsibility. COVID-19 has demonstrated that during a pandemic, no one is safe until everyone is safe. Leaving people behind is not an option. Eliminating stigma and discrimination, putting people at the centre, and grounding our responses in human rights and gender-responsive approaches are key gliding pandemics of HIV and COVID-19. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Jenny Leong, MP, the member for Newtown, and Lydia Smithers from Jenny Leong's office, Jeremy Bothaway, who is the representative for Councillor Christine Forster's office at the City of Sydney, Dori Cooper, all the representatives from the New South Wales Ministry of Health, New South Wales Health, and any COVID-19 frontline workers, all of our HIV sector partners, and research our communities of people living with HIV. We appreciate that it is a particularly busy time of the year for you all, and thank you for making the time this morning to celebrate with us. We've also received a number of apologies from people who would have liked to have been here today, but had other commitments. It's now my pleasure to welcome Yvonne Weldon to perform a Welcome to Country. Yvonne is a proud Wiradjuri woman who has volunteered and worked in Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal roles throughout her career. She is the current elected chairperson of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, a board member of Domestic Violence New South Wales and Redfern Jardim College, the deputy chair of the Australia Day Council of New South Wales, and has held key positions with the New South Wales Government and Aboriginal community-controlled sectors. Yvonne was awarded the 2019 Volunteer of the Year for the South Sydney region and has a strong passion and commitment to bringing about positive change for Aboriginal people and communities.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers. As was said, my name is Yvonne Weldon. I am a Wiradjuri woman from Cowra, here in New South Wales. I'm from the waters of the Clare, also known as the Lachlan, and of the Murrumbidgee Rivers. I am the elected chairperson of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, who are the cultural authority under the Aboriginal land for the land that we are on. I'd also like to pay my respects to all elders past and present, to all First Nations and to you and the many ancestors' lands that you travelled from today. We are at a place that's named after unwavering Camaragal woman called Barangaroo. She gave everyone what she knew and she taught them so much more. And so her commitment to each and every one of us was started many, many years ago and will continue to go beyond us. Privilege to provide a welcome to country. For me, it is a profound honour and a luxury of time. Time given by you and time of the many warriors that started the traditions for all of us. A welcome isn't just words, it is a reflection of where we are, not this modern day place, but the continuous link of life, lessons, purpose, and nurturing supplies. The boundaries of our traditional owners are not defined by the natural landscapes of the earth. The Eora Nation's country covers the Hawkes River in the north, the Nepean in the west, and the Georges River in the south. On behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, the elders and the members, I welcome everyone to the land of the Gadigal. I acknowledge the Gadigal people whose spirits and ancestors will always remain with these lands, our Mother Earth. Across this beautiful continent of ours, there are hundreds of nations, tribes and clans that have existed here for over 60,000 years. Nations of this land are the most diverse, resilient, unique and sustainable people on the planet. We are the oldest living culture of the world. Our songlines and our customs are embedded into our DNA from the land and the waterways. The land and the waterways are our life. Without them, our health, our languages, our animals, cultures, ecosystems, our people and our nations will be diminished. We don't exist in isolation of body, culture, spirit, land and water because we are one. For in our blood, we have all been affected by many things in life we don't understand, or we don't have the answers to our questions. And to pay respect and give honour, could you all please pause for a moment to remember the many sacrifices that have been made along the way, the ones we will continue to make, and the ones that should never happen. Please think about those who we have lost, the ones we need to continue to help, so many that may not realise that they may need you, and also you and ourselves. Let's spare a thought for the families, our friends and our communities, and what we should do as a community of people gathered here today and beyond. So as you connect, learn and share today, tomorrow and into our future, know that everyone's health and social emotional well-being is more important than the material things in this world. Asking the simple questions of can I help and can I support you and what can I do is an important step for you and the person that you're asking, if you may never realise the meaning of what it is to receive that answer. So no matter what walks of life we come from, we all need to support each other, bringing out hidden heartaches to share and to bring us all a strength together. The road travelled alone is the longest, hardest road there is. Don't do it on your own. I will join you and you can join me. On World AIDS Day and every day, let's work towards bringing this epidemic to an end. Now more than ever, continue to bring awareness. Also during these times of these pandemic, don't let the social distance make us socially absent. We must maintain physical distancing, but not creating barriers to our social connections. We need to connect more so now than ever. So whether that's for your work, your family, or your networks, creating an inclusion, an acceptance, and a resilience. All of us together can bring about positive changes to multiple generations. We are in this together. So let's create that future happen. Let us all draw upon my people's spirits as we continue on our journey. May my people's spirits walk with you and guide you as we strive forward for us all. Again, on behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, welcome to Gadigal land. This always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Yvonne, for a truly inspiring and heartfelt welcome to country. World AIDS Day is much more than the present and the future. It's never just been about where we are currently or where we wish to be. It's a day to remember and acknowledge the past and where we have come from. AIDS and HIV are not over yet, and World AIDS Day remains a valuable platform for us to talk about HIV and raise awareness. On World AIDS Day, we pause to remember those we have lost to AIDS, the sacrifices they made in supporting and informing others, and continue to challenge the stigma and discrimination that has attached itself to HIV/AIDS since the very beginning and continues to this day. If we lose sight of the past and fail to honour the passion, commitment and bravery of those who have been before us, we lose something of our own humanity. This is why the voice of the peer on World AIDS Day is still invaluable. On that note, I would now like to introduce Peter Schlosser from the Positive Life New South Wales Positive Speakers Bureau. Peter has been living with HIV for 36 years and has been a speaker with the Positive Speakers Bureau since 1996. Welcome, Peter.
Good morning. As was said, she's actually robbed me of my introduction. As was said, my name is Peter, and I have been living with the I've been a speaker with the Positive Speakers Bureau for 24 years. I'm happy and privileged to be here today in 2020. Saying this leaves me pleased and a little bit surprised, to say the least. It would be no surprise to tell you that I'm living with HIV and that I'm over 55. But what may be surprising is that I belong to the largest group of people living with HIV in New South Wales, and that is the people over 55. What I want you to know is what that means for me and for many of my peers, and for the clinicians here, I mean my cohort. I was first diagnosed in late 1984, aged 21 years. And I was so very kindly told by my GP that I'd not have a 25th birthday. I'm still here. 6 years later, in 1990, after a diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma, I was given 2 weeks to live. I'm still here. In early 1994, I've lost my place, my apologies. 6 years later, in 1990, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma and was given 2 weeks to live. In early 1994, I relapsed and my partner of 10 years died of AIDS just after Christmas. Then in early 1995, in the space of 2 weeks, I had 5 AIDS-defining or HIV-related illnesses. Family and friends were told to make their peace with me as I could go at any moment. I'm still here. I began prophylactic treatment for the infections that I had. Also, later in 1995, I had a grand mal epileptic fit due to scarring on the brain from one of the AIDS-defining infections that I'd had. And so my journey with comorbidities began. I also started a basic and toxic antiretroviral treatment. Despite the treatment, 2 years to live was the expectation. Regardless of the damage from the chemo and the HIV meds, chemo and HIV meds saved my life. I'm still here. Since 1997, newer and improved treatments with less side effects and better efficacy have been developed. My huge pill burden started to decline and I participated in a variety of drug trials. I was expecting everything to return to normal, and for a time, it seemed that it was, till it wasn't. In 2003, aged 40, I had a sudden and rapid progression of osteoarthritis. I was told that I needed a double knee replacement, but was denied this on the grounds that I was too young. I suffered for 10 years, becoming progressively more disabled, and pain has been my companion ever since. I'm still here. In 2011, after some frightening cognitive issues, I was diagnosed with mild HIV-related neurocognitive dysfunction. I'm still here, just more confused. In 2012, my gallbladder was removed. Most of me is still here. In 2013, I had my double knee replacement surgery. 50 was no longer too young. The resulting pain relief was amazing, though. Even less of me is still here. Now, however, other joints are painful and deforming. In 2015, a friend convinced me to participate in a University of New South Wales HPV and cancer prevention study called SPANK. My first biopsy revealed very early anal cancer and surgery rapidly ensued. I'm still here. In 2019, I felt oddly tired and unwell. Last December, so a year ago, just before Christmas, after 20 years had elapsed, I began chemotherapy for Hodgkin's lymphoma for the 3rd time. A silver lining, though, I reached a 5-year milestone of remission from anal cancer this year. My new goal now is 5 years remission from Hodgkin's lymphoma. Who says it's not good to have goals? My guess is that I'll still be here. What I'd like you to hear today and take home is that that's not the end of my story. It's not the end of the story, and it's not the end of our story. Not by a long shot. We, may I remind you, are the largest cohort of people living with HIV in New South Wales, the people that bore the brunt of the AIDS epidemic, who fought for rights, who fought for recognition, who watched our loved ones waste away and die, who buried a generation and lost our supports and social circles. We who continue to address stigma and discrimination. We who fought for and were guinea pigs for treatments are ironically, in the age of treatments and the HIV response, being forgotten and left behind. We are still here. The point of all of this is that living with HIV can be very complex for a lot of us who survived the pre-1996 diagnoses. Besides HIV, many of us now, known as long-term survivors or the AIDS generation, the over 55s, are living with a number of other conditions. Many of the people in this room know what I'm talking about, comorbidities. The overarching public health message is 1 pill a day and all will be well, which is really fantastic. 1 pill a day is the case for most diagnosed today and falls short only insofar as a cure. However, for those of us who are long-term survivors who fought for this outcome, this is not necessarily the case. My pill burden for HIV is still high by today's standards, at 5 per day. In regard to comorbidities, I take an additional 20 tablets per day. This is not an uncommon story. As we've got older, the 1 pill a day and the 1 pill a day messaging has become prevalent. We seem to have become invisible and forgotten. We're still here. We, my cohort and I, are all getting older and currently living with or facing the impact of loneliness, isolation, mental health issues, and the prospect of poorer health outcomes, retirement and nursing homes. Surely everyone in 2020 with the experience of COVID-19 pandemic can identify with this, but for us it's been an upwards of 40 years experience. Please don't forget us. Being forgotten is about becoming invisible in the HIV response. Living with HIV is not just about treatments. It's about quality of life, physical and mental. It's about social connectedness, belonging, support, inclusion, visibility and involvement, being heard and being acknowledged. Nothing about us without us. Please don't leave us behind. Please don't forget us. We are still here. My name is Peter Schlosser and I live with HIV. I really am so very grateful to still be able to say that. But sometimes it's hard. I'm still here. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for an incredibly powerful story and a poignant message that no one should be left behind. I would now like to introduce Annie Turnbull from the Powerhouse Museum, who's going to give you an overview of the wonderful AIDS memorial quilts that we will have seen when you arrived in. She's also going to tell you a little bit more about the project and the 77 other quilts that they hold at the Powerhouse. So please welcome Annie.
Hi everyone, good morning, and that was so moving. Yes, thank you for the speech. So I'm a curator at the Powerhouse Museum, and I'm really happy that we could bring 2 of the AIDS memorial quilts to display here for this event. The museum are the custodians of the quilts, and we have been since 2010. We have 79 of these beautiful memorials. We started acquiring them in 2005 with a team of museum staff and volunteers who spent 5 years researching, documenting, working out how to fold them, how to protect them, putting backing on them. And we've put all the images online on our website. And we're grateful that we can actually pull them out and show them. We don't, though, however, have stories that are attached to them. So the quilt project started in about the 1990s, and it was Richard Johnson and Andrew Carter who started talking about creating memorials to people who had died of AIDS. So family and children and loved ones started creating, and you can see from the AIDS quilts, most of them are made up of 8 panels. And you can see from the designs in them that they reflect the life of the person who died. But unfortunately, when we got the quilts to the museum, we had the documentation from the quilt project, but sometimes there was nothing. If the person's name is on the front of the quilt, then that's in our record. But because of privacy issues and discrimination at the time that the quilts were made, often there wasn't a lot of information. So what I would love if people in this audience know people that had a quilt made to them, they could contact me directly, Annie Turnbull at the Powerhouse Museum. Or if you look online, if you just Google AIDS quilts, Powerhouse Museum, you'll come to our collection of AIDS quilts. And we do have a button down the bottom to add more information. And we do also make quilts available for family or loved ones to come visit. We store them very carefully out at our Castle Hill site, but we do take families and loved ones out there and unroll them, and they promise me information after they've seen their quilt, but I often don't end up getting it. So I really would love to add to the stories available about the quilts. We were the first museum in the world to hold its nation's quilts, and we have an honour and a duty to make them accessible. And so we are so happy, and thank my colleagues Vanessa and Roger over there for helping, and the staff here, to make them accessible today. So please, after this, have a look, ask myself or my colleagues a question, but thank you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Annie, and I can't say how honoured we are to actually have two of the quilts on display today. They often aren't taken out of the Powerhouse Museum, so we were very fortunate that we were able to have two here, and also to be displayed on the ground, which was the original way that the quilts were displayed. So it's now my pleasure to welcome to the stage your panel for today's proceedings, who are going to discuss reflections, gaps, the successes and learnings from the current New South Wales HIV strategy over the past 5 years, and look to the future of the next strategy. So please welcome Carolyn Murray, the Acting Director of Population Health Strategy and Performance at the Centre for Population Health and Contact Tracing COVID Responses at the Public Health Emergency Operations Centre at the New South Wales Ministry of Health. Heavens, that was a mouthful. Thanks, Carolyn. Philip Keane, the coordinator of the New South Wales HIV Prevention Partnership Project in the HIV Epidemiology and Prevention Program at the Kirby Institute, University of New South Wales. Nick Parkle, the Chief Executive Officer of ACON. Limin Mao, Associate Professor at the Centre for Social Research and Health, University of New South Wales. And last but not least, Neil Fraser, the Deputy CEO of Positive Life New South Wales. So the format for today is I'm just going to ask the panel some questions, and they're going to reflect on the previous strategy, and we perhaps sort of have some ideas of what we might like to see in the next strategy. So Carolyn, first of all, what have been the successes for the current 2016 to 2020 New South Wales HIV strategy in the past 5 years?
Thanks, Jane. New South Wales is a world leader in responding to HIV. And I think we all know that, all sitting in this room that have been working on this for such a long time. This has only been possible, though, because of the partnership between people living with HIV, their families and those affected by HIV, the government and the non-government sectors, the researchers and clinicians. Significant successes under the previous strategy, the 2016 to 2020 strategy, mean that the virtual elimination of HIV transmission is now possible under the new forthcoming, HIV strategy, which will be 21 to 25. There's a range of ways we've been working on this I think I want to reflect on, and that is the new ways to prevent HIV, to test for HIV and treat HIV have led to dramatic reductions in the rates of diagnosis. In fact, since surveillance began, we have the lowest rates since 1985. HIV diagnosis decreased by 19% in New South Wales residents between 2015 and 2019. This reduction was greatly attributed to by the rapid rollout of PrEP, with over 15,000 people having been dispensed PrEP since it was started in 2018. We have the high rates of testing and treatment, as I mentioned, and also reducing that time from when someone's diagnosed to when they get treated. In 2019, New South Wales has achieved 2 of the UNAIDS fast-track 95-95-95 targets. 95% of those diagnosed have initiated treatment, and 95% of people on treatment have an undetectable viral load. The place that we need to do some more work is 95 people who have HIV knowing their status.
Thank you, Carolyn. And a follow-up question. As we've seen with COVID-19, notification rates don't reflect success in isolation. What can you tell us about the HIV testing rates in the past 5 years?
So HIV testing has continued to increase. I'll just scream over those children, sorry. Has continued to increase over the past 5 years. However, we would all recognise that 2020 and COVID has impacted on our HIV diagnosis during 2020. HIV diagnosis decreased by 31% during 2020, and this is likely driven by the restricted movement that we all had to experience, the lower levels of casual sex activity, and the reallocation of some clinical resources. During April and May, when restrictions were at their most severe, overall testing declined significantly. The recent declines may be due to decreased testing and other impacts of COVID, but they do not necessarily reflect such a large decrease in HIV transmission. And it's that work with our partners that are on the stage today that we need to continue to do. But I do want to say what COVID has given us is long-lasting and significant changes to the way health is delivered, with things like telehealth and even e-prescriptions. And it's this work I think we need to continue, and to continue these innovations.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn. Philip, given the work that you do with the New South Wales HIV Prevention Partnership Project, can you talk about the role of community in ensuring analysis of the data accurately reflects the community?
Sure, thank you. I guess as Jane said, the name of the project that I coordinate is the New South Wales HIV Prevention Partnership Project, and that's the key word, partnership. In the project, the project partners are the Ministry of Health, ACON, Positive Life New South Wales, the Centre for Social Research in Health, and ASHM. So everyone on the panel here today is actually a member of one of the groups on the partnership project. And particularly through the involvement of Positive Life New South Wales and ACON, we have representatives on our working groups who are involved in the study design of the research that we do, and also the analysis and the interpretation of data. So community representatives are involved at every stage of the design and interpretation of the data. And I think that's been critical for the success of the project, and some of the insights that we've made in being able to interpret data as it becomes available very rapidly, and to be able to turn that into changed responses in terms of policy and implementation. But one thing I wanted to mention today, because we're talking about partnership, is that because we're reflecting a little over the last 5 years, is that over that period, sadly, we lost some of our key leaders in the HIV response. Right at the beginning of that period, we lost Alan Brotherton, who was one of the first presidents of Positive Life New South Wales when it went by a different name. I met Alan when I was working on the Beats Outreach project at ACON, and he and I were driving around the suburbs talking about his work as president. So he died early in that period. We then lost Lavinia Crooks in 2017, who had been, in fact, when I met her, she was in the 1980s, she was interviewing people with HIV, some of the first people who'd been diagnosed through a project at the University of Wollongong, and went on to really build ASHM into the amazing organisation that it is now. In 2018, sadly, we lost David Cooper. He was involved in clinical research in the development of every antiretroviral drug that's available. He also was integral in making HIV treatments available in Africa and in building HIV research capacity in Asia, and it's great to have Dori here with us today. And finally, this year, we lost Jeff Honor, who worked at the ministry. He was an ED of Positive Life. He worked at ACON, and was involved. I guess people like all of those people embody the spirit of partnership, because they were involved in so many ways in different aspects of the response, and all had an ethos of collaboration, which I think has placed us in a really strong position today to build the sort of response we need under the new strategy.
Thank you, Philip. And following on from Carolyn's question on testing rates, what are some of the indicators from the testing data that show opportunities for further engagement?
Well, I think the good news, perhaps starting with the good news, is that we see in data from the Access Network, which is a sentinel surveillance system which collects data from publicly funded sexual health clinics and high caseload and medium caseload private GP clinics. We see that among overseas-born gay and bisexual men, that when they connect with a clinic, they test for HIV at the same frequency as Australian-born men, and they adopt, the men who are increased risk adopt PrEP at the same rate or sometimes even higher rates than Australian-born men. But what I think that what we need to work harder at is that we also see in the data that many overseas-born men, gay and bisexual men, are diagnosed, those who are diagnosed with HIV are diagnosed very late, sometimes with advanced HIV disease, which is really extraordinary that we should still be seeing that today. And over 40% of overseas-born gay and bisexual men are diagnosed late with HIV. So I think there's more work to be done there, but the opportunity is that when we do connect them with services, they seem to participate in prevention and protecting themselves and their partners in the same ways as others.
Great. Thanks so much, Philip. Nick, on to you. If the HIV response has taught us anything, it's about improving access to treatment. Can you please talk to us about how ACON mobilised community around PrEP, who has benefited most from PrEP, and what we need to do to ensure access in the future for all?
Sure. Sure, thank you, Jane. Is that on?
It should be on.
Sure. Okay. I'd just like to start by thanking Philip for acknowledging those people that we have lost, particularly Jeff Honour, who was, for me, such a hero and so formative in my thinking and my work with ACON. He was so insightful, and I think Jeff had an understanding of the HIV response, particularly the New South Wales HIV response, and gay men's response to HIV more intimately than anyone I know. And I know a lot of people in this room feel Jeff's loss acutely. I'd also like to thank Positive Life and New South Wales Health for putting on this event. I think it is wonderful that events like this keep up the momentum around World AIDS Day. It's so important that we come together to reflect on what has been lost, but also what has been achieved, but also what needs to happen into the future. Because HIV is not over, and it's not over until it's over for everyone, and we still have a lot of work to go. You could, the last 5% will be the hardest and the most difficult, but it is in sight, and so that momentum needs to be sustained. So to New South Wales Health and to Positive Life, thank you for today. This is beautiful, absolutely beautiful, so thank you. PrEP, yes, the game changer, as it was always kind of positioned to be. Well, in lots of ways it has been a game changer, and in other ways it hasn't. I remember the 2012 HIV strategy had only one or two slight references to PrEP in it. We knew it was sort of in the pipeline and coming down the way, and the reference to the strategy at that point was, we will trial a small kind of population level kind of PrEP sort of thing, and that was its commitment. And I think the amount of people in that trial initially was 300. I think Kerry Chant, Bill Whittaker, Andrew Grulich and others kind of thought, I don't think we're kind of going to get the scale that we need to kind of, for it to be the game changer that we're going to need it to be. So it was through the extraordinary advocacy, I think, of people like David Cooper, Lavinia, Kerry Chant and others that really worked with farmer, if you like, to come up with solutions to get workarounds, the federal government, so we could get PrEP at scale, speed and highly targeted. Those were the three elements that David Cooper really talked about for PrEP to be effective. So fortunately in New South Wales, through the extraordinary leadership and I think internationally best practice leadership of a HIV response, we were fortunate enough to get access to PrEP before and at scale and at speed before other jurisdictions were. We also knew though, particularly I think through the community lens, that there were, we'd been looking to North America, some places in Europe, where PrEP was being stigmatised, even within the communities. There was this kind of slut shaming going on for people who were using PrEP. There was this sort of kind of sideline kind of narrative going on that pharma was pushing PrEP. So we absolutely recognised that we need to get on the front foot and start addressing those things. But like we've always done with any intervention, whether it was condoms, whether it's early treatment, it needs to be led by and for the communities themselves, with them playing a role. So we often frame that these days in terms like co-design or client-centred or patient-centred. I think that's the very ethos of the HIV response for the last 35 years in New South Wales, and certainly what ACON stands and operates for. It's our backbone, if you like. So that ethos allowed us to create a narrative that was different around PrEP, that it was about increasing intimacy, it was about pleasure, it was also about protecting yourselves and your loved ones and your friends and your networks. So I think those messages and the kind of heritage that we have in New South Wales about investing in social marketing and good education for community by community put us in a really good place to do that. But Jane, your point too, well, who's benefited? Largely it has been cis white gay men who are community attached and community connected to inner city Sydney. Fortunately, we have a great surveillance system in New South Wales that tell us that is the case and also tells us who is missing out. I think those people who have missed out on PrEP were probably missing out on treatment, were probably missing out on other services as well, but we just didn't have the data or the surveillance system in place to highlight their needs like we do now. So it's only now that we're turning our attention in a much granular, resource-intensified way to those populations that need additional resources. And of course, they're overseas-born, gay and bisexual men. They're also gay and bisexual men or men that have sex with men, so they don't identify as being gay or mightn't be community attached, living in Greater Western Sydney. They're equally at risk or deserving of higher priority or more resourcing, and indeed younger people too. But then we have to look at intersectionality as well, because if we don't look at intersectionality, which is the really challenging, complex, hard stuff, but also the really rewarding stuff, we're going to miss out populations in significantly acute need: Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, trans and gender diverse people, women, people living in rural and regional settings. So while we've done a great job, I think, at bringing PrEP to scale at speed and targeting perhaps a high-risk population groups, people have been left behind. So we've got to be conscious of that, but we also can't feed ourselves a narrative that this is just happening with PrEP. This is probably happening with a whole range of HIV and sexual health services, not just PrEP.
Thank you. So this sort of segues into my next question, which in 2019, ACON launched the Blueprint for Improving the Health and Wellbeing of the Trans and Gender Diverse Community in New South Wales, and more recently launched Trans Hub. Can you tell us a little about this, and what are the next steps to ensure trans and gender diverse people are more represented in the data?
Sure. So thanks, Jane. We did launch the Blueprint, and we've subsequently launched Trans Hub. I'd like to say with both of those initiatives that they're actually led by trans and gender diverse people themselves. ACON provided the platform and the resources for them to do that, but it's actually trans and gender diverse people in New South Wales communities that are doing that. We responded to that because absolutely, I think, at an organisational and a board level and a senior leadership team level, we absolutely saw the lack of health promotion and health supports available to trans and gender diverse people, and the awful outcomes, health outcomes that they continue to experience, so nothing was being done. So certainly we provided the platform and the resourcing for the blueprint to be developed out of our own funds. With TransHub, which is really an online portal for a whole set of information and resources and care pathways for trans and gender diverse people, their allies and health workers, that was funded through a grant through Microsoft. But they've all been driven by trans and gender diverse people themselves in response to the lack of other things existing there. You know, trans and gender diverse people are mobilising, they are engaged, they are becoming more visible. They need to be rejoiced and celebrated for who they are, not beaten up, literally, narratively and figuratively, unfortunately. So that's why we went about doing that. And we know, we also, when you, and that's about broader health issues, not just HIV and sexual health. We do know when it comes to HIV and sexual health, though, through access data, that I think it's 5.7% of trans women and 3.5% of trans men, when they present at a sexual health clinic, they're HIV positive. Yet they have not been given the visibility or attention in state or national HIV strategies until very recently. So once again, another population group where we're finally getting data to absolutely start to go, we've got an issue here and we need to give some attention and some visibility to these people. Australia's a bit unique in that way. I think the international HIV response has always been more attuned in to the needs, particularly around trans women, which I think when you look at the global data, it is far more significant in a lot of continents and a lot of countries, even more so than cis gay men. So it's time. It's absolutely time. This population took its place within the policy settings that we're all responsible for. Part of that next step will be improving the data set and the surveillance system, if you like, so that they are visible with greater clarity. I think they're visible at the moment, but they're visible not with the required lack of clarity as to who they are and what their behaviours might be looking like that leads to their risk. There's a simple solution, the sort of two-step process. What gender were you presumed to be at birth? What gender are you actually? And having that in, and that gives much greater clarity within the data. And I'm sure within the life of this strategy, we will see movement in that space. Well, I'm not sure, but I'm hopeful. And I think we are on that journey here in New South Wales.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick. Lemin, as Philip has noted, we've seen a great success in the reduction of new HIV diagnosis among Australian-born men who have sex with men. However, these successes have not been replicated in overseas-born men who have sex with men. Thinking forward to the next New South Wales HIV strategy, how do we shift the HIV response to better include overseas-born men in the work of the Ending HIV Partnership?
Thanks, Jay. I think that, in our epidemiological terms, we often put people into different baskets. Gay men living gayborhood, overseas-born gay men, gay identified or non-gay identified MSM. But, from what we learned, Jane asked me looking into the future, but I want to look back a little bit, go back to 20 years ago when I first started my PhD, looking at gay Asian men. With ACOM, started with the Silk Road program. And I, among many of you, I'm the minority, not gay, GLBTI identified, overseas born, and how could I do such kind of research? I think, the partnership is a key, but what we did as a partnership with government, with services, with communities, is invest in people. So, kind of overseas born, we see there is, as Philip just said, we see them catching up in terms of HIV testing, but that's in the last 20 years. We see that leap in a gradual term, but also prompted by service change and particularly with peer-led services. So looking for future, I had the fortunate also to work with apart from ACON, Pause Life, including Nick Hollis's team, different organizations, Scarlet Alliance, through different segments of the population, and how we invest in people, not just putting them into baskets, but empower them and let the next generation young leaders. I'm fortunate, as Philip said, standing on some giants. Some are still with us, some already in the past. But I think we know HIV, as everybody said, is not going to eradicate unless everybody is in. So I think that investing people, empower young generations, like Neil, it really to work. It's a generation's work that we build on each other to move those lot of stigma, lot of stereotype, or a lot of inconsequential excuses that they are just too difficult to reach, or they are too difficult to serve. They are so, they don't understand English, they are not knowledgeable. No, they have their ways of connecting, of working, and of, help themselves to help the country too. So I think that we have to probably shift our mentality in the next strategy to how really to co-design, co-work, and co-led by people who really has a knowledge in the field.
Thank you. So, second question, Min. People living with HIV have been at the forefront of the response since the 1980s. We now have, as Peter mentioned, over 50% of people living with HIV in New South Wales who are aged 50 years and older. This means the population of ageing PLHIV is growing significantly. What are the emerging issues that the next New South Wales HIV strategy will need to consider in this respect?
I trust that we have the best people, we have the best biomedical technology. We also have, a growing base of people. But, really, to tribute to Peter's speech, what I realized, I recently got a Commonwealth-funded research project looking at aging among people living with HIV, HBV, HCV, and also looking at end-of-life planning. What I realized is that actually living, aging and dying is quite a taboo topic, even among our leaders. We realize there's a tidal wave coming, but how we, HIV now, as Caroline just mentioned, it's becoming a lot more mainstream service because it's a chronic livable disease, but also we understand there's stigma, discrimination, isolation. Our people are, sometimes put in a quite disadvantaged situation compared to the so-called general aging population. So what I realize is probably New South Wales is very forward-thinking always, that we can, together with our Commonwealth partners, to build some consensus among our leaders, among our services, to really think about ways to care for our people, don't let them falling through the crack, in terms of planning, in terms of peer support, in terms of service integration. And probably, I know if it's easy, it won't be us to do it. We have to take the hard path and really, question us whether or not we are doing right. But with, even today, during the COVID, there are many people, we feel like family gathering here for a really public event. I think we have the will, we have the skills to work together and learn from each other. So I think that for next strategy, I know that, service pathways is a key topic in the new strategy. But I think our people has to demonstrate ourselves like we did with gay Asian men. We have to find ways ourselves and then get the system to support us.
Great, thank you. So Neil, when we think about global solidarity, shared responsibility, we have more than 95% of people living with HIV in New South Wales who are on treatment and have achieved an undetectable viral load. From people living with HIV's perspective, what have been the successes against the current New South Wales HIV strategy over the past 5 years?
I think for people living with HIV, our access to treatment has been, one of the key successes for the HIV response that community has led. when I was diagnosed with HIV, you were either well enough or you were sick before you were given access to treatments. I was having a conversation with a friend and someone who was also diagnosed fairly recently, and on the same day that they received their diagnosis, they left the clinic with treatment in their pocket, and that's a fantastic thing. And sadly, that's not the case for everyone diagnosed with HIV today. The majority of people who are diagnosed in a sexual health clinic will be given the option of being able to access treatment that day, and that's fantastic. But for people who are diagnosed, and there are more and more of these diagnoses taking place that are in local GP settings in Greater Western Sydney, for them, the time it takes for them to be able to access treatment is not the same. It's definitely a lot better than what it has been. And I think, for our the previous strategy that we get to say farewell to very shortly, that has definitely been, for people living with HIV, one of the greatest successes. For people who are on HIV treatment today and have an undetectable viral load, we're doing our part. It's not just about keeping us healthy. It's about looking after our loved ones as well. People living with HIV have been a key part of that response in making sure, we're looking after our loved ones, our families, and our friends.
Okay, thanks. As a person living with HIV, what do you see as the priorities for the next New South Wales HIV strategy, and what do we need to do to ensure that no person living with HIV is left behind?
I'm one of the lucky ones that I'm the second generation. I have many elders who have come before me. I did my first talk with Peter. He basically held my hand, and I think I managed to get 3 words out. Now give me a microphone and I don't shut up. I've Jeff Honor, who passed away this year, Lance, David, who's just decided to retire as well. I've been very blessed to have a lot of elders, but I think it's the new generation. It's our responsibility to make sure that none of them are left behind. That we continue to, U equals U is great. Undetectable equals untransmitted is great. It's a fantastic message for those who are very sexually active. It's great news, but it doesn't address, the challenges that still exist around comorbidities. In particular, when we have new legislation that's being passed that will introduce mandatory testing, I think it's, my generation's responsibility to stand up and continue to do that fight that the previous generation has done before. I think our message here is to make sure that no one is left behind, and we still have a lot to do. So we're excited for the new strategy for that.
Great. Thank you. So thank you, everyone. Please join me in thanking all the panel for a very thought-provoking and considered discussion. So it's now my privilege to welcome Michelle Tobin, a proud Yorta Yorta woman living with HIV. She's representing the Positive Speakers Bureau and her role as the Aboriginal Health Project Officer at Positive Life New South Wales. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi and welcome everybody. First I'd like to acknowledge the traditional people of the lands where we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I also like to pay my respects to our brothers and sisters that have gone before us, and for the many that are here still, leading the fight. I also want to pay my respects to my late husband who passed away in 1992, and as we'll see the panels that are laying up there, I did create a panel for my late husband, and it's on display as I speak at the Positive Living Centre in Melbourne. And I'm quite proud of, what I achieved back then and the fact that I'm still here. I also want to pay my respects and acknowledge my 2 daughters Ashley, who's 31, and Kirsty, who is 26. Kirsty was born whilst I was positive, and thankfully she's negative. And from both of my daughters, I now have 5 beautiful grandchildren that I will be hoping to see them grow into young adults like I have seen those two. So my name is Michelle Tobin. I'm a proud Aboriginal woman of the Yorta Yorta Nation living with HIV since 1990. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a daughter, a sister and an auntie, and also a loving partner. I am also a descendant of the stolen generation. Our mob faces an unacceptable situation. 2 years ago, the Kirby Institute data showed that the rates of HIV diagnosis for my mob were double of that of non-Indigenous people. In 2020, I'm sorry to say that these figures have changed little and, if anything, are slightly increasing. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people experience lower HIV testing rates, lower pre-exposure prophylaxis PrEP uptake compared to non-Indigenous. There is higher HIV diagnosis rates, delayed HIV diagnosis, and higher rates of HIV diagnosis amongst our women compared to their non-Indigenous counterparts. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people need tailored and differentiated approaches to HIV prevention and treatment. Service providers must draw on our wisdom, lived experience and direct engagement with the GIPA and MIPA principles to revitalise the HIV Indigenous counterparts. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people need tailored and... Sorry, I was just reading the same paragraph. As an Aboriginal Health Program Officer at Positive Life New South Wales, I lead an Aboriginal designed needs assessment project to generate a culturally sensitive HIV service delivery model in collaboration with an advisory committee of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Co-designing a culturally aware and appropriate service model with, by and for Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islanders is just the beginning to generate the valuable understanding, knowledge and solutions my community needs to reduce HIV transmission. For example, U equals U does not resonate with our mob for a number of reasons. You can pass it on is a much more nuanced and culturally appropriate use of language. We've seen the success rates in HIV messaging and health promotion when our mob is involved in the development and implementation. Nothing without us, without us. Or nothing about us, without us, sorry. We urgently call for a reframing of mainstream public health approaches to invest in Aboriginal communal wellbeing, an ancient approach that our mob in New South Wales have practiced since the dream time, that addresses the social determinants of health, including culture, kinship and belonging. Having said that, the other social determinants of health, income, education, employment and working conditions, physical environments, healthy childhoods and access to health care all impact on the health status of our mob heavily. While being Aboriginal today raises the incidence of poor health outcomes including HIV diagnosis, race is no predictor of health, no predictor. Let's take accountability for the long history of colonisation, disposition and intergenerational trauma that has significantly impacted every facet of life for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and recognise the strength, the spirit, resilience of the first Australians. While the latest epidemiology data still shows our mob continuing to shoulder a disproportionate burden of HIV and STIs, I am hopeful that the co-designed approaches to HIV prevention and treatment will be firmly grounded in community by World AIDS Day. Our mob should be proud, and they are very deadly as Aboriginal people of this country. I also want to acknowledge 2 of my founding brothers who went before me and who've opened the door for many other Aboriginal people to lead the way in the response to HIV, and that is Neville Fazula, who we will acknowledge his passing on the 11th of December once more, and also just recently Rodney Junga Williams, who are both the co-founders of Patson. And, you know, without these guys, and of course with myself and a number of others, You know, we are the ones who have taken the lead in response to HIV in this country, and we'd like for you all to walk beside us to making sure that we too can reach the 95-95 target. So in closing, sovereignty was never ceded in this country, and it was and always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, for providing such a clarion call to action. Finally, it's my pleasure to welcome the fabulous Elkie and Ollie Thorpe, who will accompany Elkie on guitar. Triple J Unearthed have described Elkie as a singer-songwriter with a passion for the melodic mastery of Burt Bacharach and an ongoing obsession with the fiery pop dramatics and genius of Kate Bush. As an entirely independent artist, singles off her EP have received BBC One radio play and stellar reviews from the UK and the US. Elkie is going to perform 2 songs for us, and the first, Movie, was praised by the acclaimed lyricist Sir Tim Rice. Please welcome Elkie and Ollie. Slight halt in the proceedings. We need to find them. We won't be one moment. They were here earlier. We're just not quite sure where they are now. It is a very big space. Yes, we can lose people easily here. We had to create a very cavernous space today simply to conform to COVID-19 restrictions. So, here comes Elkie. And Ollie. Okay, you're welcome. Pleasure.
Hi, thanks everyone. Good morning. My name's Elkie. Thank you so much, Positive Life New South Wales, for having us today for such an important event. This is Ollie Thorpe on guitar. Give him a big round of applause. I'm a Sydney-based artist. This first song we're going to perform for you is called Movie. Sorry, I can't remember if I said what my name was. My name is Elkie. Gonna spend all night, gonna spend all day, trying not to think about you, trying not to think. I'm gonna take my time with the words I won't say to you, trying not to think about you, trying not to think I'm not doing so well. I got you on repeat, but I might as well, because you're my favorite movie. In my head, I keep on watching you over again. I can say every line, I know how it ends. I keep it rolling again and again. Oh, trying not to think about you. Gonna spend my life doing what I won't do with you. Gotta get you out of my head. But the lights grow dim and you're in slow motion again. You are everything I believe on repeat, but I might as well, because you're my favorite movie. In my head, I keep on watching you over again. I can say every line, I know how it ends. I keep it rolling again and again and again. Oh no, the picture keeps fading. I know. What will I do without you? Oh no, I watch you wherever I go, because you're my favorite movie. In my head, I keep on watching you over again. I can say every line, I know how it ends. I keep it rolling again and again. Oh, try not to think about you. Try not to think about you.
Thanks much. That was my song called Movie. We're gonna pick it up a little bit. This next one is called Golden Age.
We are the golden age. We like to live it, disengage. We never act our age, living our gilded cage, because our heart's not in it. We cover our scars to forget who we are. There's nobody who's from the mountain no more. Oh, we can be fools if we want. We want. Oh, we can be heroes if we had the urge, but we don't. Oh, we keep our cool as we free fall, free fall. We are an echo that's hard to hear. We tell a story so insincere. Our heart's not in it. We take you easy. We have no fear. We chase the glory of a new frontier. Our heart's not in it. Because our heart's not in it. We look to ourselves just as Narcissus fell. Nobody who's from the mountain no more. Oh, we can be fools if we want. We want. Oh, we can be heroes if we have the urge, but we don't. Oh, we keep our cool as we free fall, free fall. Oh, free fall. Nobody who's from the mountain no more. Oh, we can be fools if we want. We want. Oh, we can be heroes if we had the urge, but we don't. Oh, we keep our cool as we free fall, free fall.
Thank you so much. My name's Elkie. Thank you, Positive Life New South Wales.
Thank you, Elkie and Ollie, for two absolutely incredible songs and adapting them to our environment here. I read in another of Elkie's reviews that every music blogger ever has said an artist is someone to keep an eye on, and I find that annoying, but keep them damn peepers peeled on Elkie. She's really beep good and has a commercially accessible sound that is going to take her places. After listening to Elkie, I'm sure you'll agree. Please join with me in thanking Elkie and Ollie again. So this brings to end our proceedings. I'd like to thank you to our partner, the New South Wales Ministry of Health, Yvonne Weldon, our speakers, Peter and Michelle, the fantastic panel, our wonderful musicians and artists, Jono, Steph, Elkie and Ollie, the staff here at the Cutaway at Barangaroo, particularly Sabia, Greg and David, Annie, Vanessa, Roger and Kerry from the Powerhouse Museum, Alex Galeazzi and Anthony Reid for their tenacity, technical and organisational wizardry, and to all of you for attending today. I'd like to give a particular shout out and thank you to all our dedicated staff and volunteers who have worked tirelessly to bring this event together, and without whom, frankly, today would not have been possible. Finally, I'd just like to remind you this is a COVID-safe event, and we'd ask that you try and observe physical distancing restrictions as you depart. Thank you all again, and enjoy World AIDS Day.
I'll share what you're holding. Keep our lines open. Share on your
I never would have said that I could face, but now I'm enraged. Feel like I'm a parrot in a cage with what's to say, but now it's too late. Conversations never seem to end, counting from then. It's obvious that me and you pretend we made amends, back here again. Maybe I'll hide my head inside as I will slip through my hands. Home's all that is meant to be, these bones rest every part of me. I'm not out of time, the clock's ticking in my mind. Come rain or shine, the clock's ticking. All the homes, all that is meant to be, these bones rest every part of me. I'm not out of time, the clock's ticking in my mind. Come rain or shine, the clock's ticking. All the no, I gotta leave it all behind before it's bedtime. I can see them turning out the lights, but I won't fight so near to midnight. Maybe